class on health and how we can manage our diabetes and whatever illnesses comes along. Okay? So, without much ado, over to Sue Visser. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald, and thanks for having us here, and thank you for your time. At any stage you'd like to flag me down or contradict me or argue, you're most welcome to do so. I am a health researcher. I'm not a doctor and I'm not an alternative practitioner at all. So I stand in the middle, and although our website is termed a pseudoscience website, I looked up what science is, and it's basically observing, experimenting and evaluating the results. So I think we're all scientists. We're all curious. We all try and test things out. And when something's good, you tell your friends this works and this doesn't work. And this is how you've become a club with diabetes as your focal point. And you share and you encourage each other. And you have talks. And you have people here. And today there is absolutely no sales agenda. Often after eating, you'll notice it's for all blood types. Now basically there's a problem with that because most doctors do not believe in blood types. So I'm just curious again as a scientist, do you know your blood type?
Yes.
The ABO positive. Who does not know their blood type? Right, there's two people who don't. Maybe at the end of this talk we'll have some information for you as to why you need to know your blood type. Because the food is all different for each blood type. So we have blood type A, blood type B, blood type O, and blood type AB. So those who don't know your blood type, you might like to choose one. Most people, when you tell them what they can and can't eat for their blood type, say, can I change my blood type? I'd rather like the one that eats milk, drinks milk and dairy products, but I can go without wheat, so can I change? You can't change your blood. Now, how it works and why it is so important, especially with diabetes. People think diabetes, type 2, is a disease. It's basically a side effect of not eating properly, that's all. We never used to get diabetes. During the war, when there was a great sugar shortage, there wasn't much diabetes at all. Then in times of peace, when all the carbohydrates and the hamburgers and the desserts and the ice cream started spewing out of all the takeaway outlets, suddenly diabetes got rampant, it got out of control. So let's have a look first at our blood type. Okay? Why is it important to know which blood type you are? There are 4 basic ones, and I have categorized them as such. In the book, pink or red is blood type O. B for blue, easy to remember, and yellow for A. Now the hybridized blood type is AB, and it sits in between the two, so we've made it green. So it's easy to do the color coding in the book. The original book by Peter Demo is very dogged and slow because you have to look up in each section on tables in black and white and try and make lists of foods. Here it is already presented for you within the color panels. The moment you have the book, you can look up, aha, there's my column. A lot of the things are crossed out, and they are usually your favorite foods that you eat most often. And I must warn you, those are the ones that get you into trouble. We'll prove it to you. You see, it's all very well being a diabetic and taking medication. But if you're still eating wrong, you're putting the error in and you're trying to just smother the symptoms. Diabetes is a symptom of insulin resistance. Now, with the blood type, we all have antigens. And these are your antigens floating around the blood. They are little code readers, barcode readers. And they go and they scan all the food with all their little antigens made of proteins. And they will go and sniff around the food, and they'll either react and say, this is good for you, you can tolerate a bit, or no, it's bad for you. And if you keep eating what's bad for you, this is what happens to the food. There are things called lectins in food. Lectins are like Velcro. They stick. Now, it would be lovely if we all had the same lectins. But I'll show you now. When blood type O eats a food like bread, here's the analogy. Here's your bread. Okay? Here comes the blood type O antigen. Lectins. Bind it up because the antigen says it's a bad lectin, and look what happens to that bread in your stomach. The same thing now happens to a blood type A who eats beef. It doesn't suit him. The same thing will happen. Now when blood type A eats the same bread, and he's one of the variants that can tolerate wheat, the antigen whips around the lectins and they don't. When you get a food that agrees with all types, it can interact with the food and have a beneficial reaction. So if everybody's eating broccoli, this is what broccoli will do to your food. It's beneficial. So that's basically a little demonstration on how lectins work. But there aren't only 4 blood types. There are 8. Each one has got a cousin, a variant. Somebody's nodding their head. Do you know what the 2 variants are called?
Positive and negative. Positive and negative.
Positive and negative are subtypes that have got nothing really to do with food. We're talking about an extra set of antigens in human beings which are also expressed in the blood type, but they come from the saliva, the digestive juices, and elsewhere in the body where you make secretions. Even semen is blood type specific, and that's a very good one for pursuing paternity cases. That's how they caught Charlie Chaplin. When the offspring had a different secretory antigen. It happened as far back as then, but in this country people refuse to do the antigen test with the saliva. I've tried with all the laboratories, and until medical science can catch up with common sense, we've had to find another way of doing it. So we say a secretor has 4 different types of antigens coming from the saliva. They're different. And they go into each blood type and they secrete extra expression. Now, a person who secretes this extra expression is called a secretor. The one who's a non-secretor does not have this extra gadget. He's just plain. So it's true that you can test blood in a laboratory with food antigens and come up with some very good results. But they're only going to work for the non-secretors because it's not going to tell you the full story. And that little test costs 1,900 rand. The book costs less than 200 rand. You have it for life, and there is a lot more fun and games to be had from reading the book. So that's why we wrote a book, to make it simple for South Africans. Now you're saying, what has this got to do with diabetes? Shoulder okay?
Yes.
This is quite an invasive muscle test. We use more subtle ones as kinesiologists, but this is a good one. It's very good. Your name?
Gerald.
Push it up and resist me. Is it really Gerald?
Gerald.
Say my name is something else. My name is Desmond Tutu. Come on, say.
My name is Desmond.
No, it's fine. My name is
Gerald.
Gerald. Yes. Okay, Gerald, what is this? Hold it on here and say, my name is Gerald. Come.
My name is Gerald.
Hold it on out from you. Let me test it. Push it up. Resist me. My name is Gerald.
My name is
What's
Gerald.
wrong with your arm, Gerald? Come on, let's hear it again. My name is Gerald.
My name is Gerald.
Resist me. Yeah. Put that there. My name is Gerald.
My name is Gerald.
You break the circuit. So that's how we work. It's a very dramatic. Oh, just leave it here for the meantime. It's an old model. I won't take it. It just shows you what agrees or doesn't agree. You can use machinery, you can use bioresonance testing, whatever. This is simple, it's free, you can all do it with each other, it's great fun. Right, hold that against you. Now it all works on frequencies. Let's see if this frequency suits you. Now resist me. My name is Gerald.
My name is Gerald.
Really? Oh dear. Oh dear. Have a look at this one. My name is Gerald.
My name is Gerald.
And this one.
My name is Gerald.
Strong.
Thank you. Okay, what was in this box that collapsed your arm? Have a look.
Bread.
You see, it's brown bread. So obviously that doesn't agree with you, but you'll still go home tonight and eat it. Let's have a look at an apple. Now I might have hidden something in that apple. I sometimes do this to flummox people.
My name is Gerald.
Are you a blood type O?
I don't know my blood.
Don't know your blood type, do you? But now, the lentils didn't agree with you. You know what was in this box? Lentil sprouts. Isn't that interesting? The lentils don't suit everybody either. They don't suit me, for instance, but lentil sprouts suit all blood types. So that's how we test. Now we're going to test you on something interesting. This is very young. My name is Gerald.
My name is Gerald.
Oh, really? Okay, that's brown sugar. Now let's see what white sugar does to you.
My name is Gerald.
Is that white sugar? It's xylitol. Are you familiar with xylitol?
Yes.
No.
Would you like to taste it? We've got to look at is how we, as human beings, react with our bodies. Now, I'm going to show you the body boxes. I always work with the body as a computer. These are all different departments that we work with in terms of cleaning up your act. And I call them the body boxes. When it comes to hormones, insulin is a hormone. So we will start with this box and we won't get very far this afternoon other than this box because each one is a particular tool. But today we're doing diabetes. What controls your body? Information, instructions, right. Software, it's like a computer. Some of you can work out with your children's computers. If you can't, ask your grandchild to explain this to you. Programs and a computer hardware. Now you can have an error here and you can change things in here. But you also have to reprogram, otherwise the error will still occur. Now if you want to improve all these boxes all at once, you can have a body that looks like that. There's something close to where I've got to. Where everything's clean, everything works properly, and there are no errors in the system. Proof enough, if you haven't had a cold in 20 years, you must have learned something. Right. A clean body, a healthy body, cannot be infected by anything because you have an immune system to do that job. So, this is how we clean up. But believe me, I can destroy this box and all the beautiful results that are in it just by having bad programming. If you put a negative mindset onto that beautiful clean body, it will mess it up. It will manifest into a sick being again. Now, the most dangerous part of this mind box is it is programmable. So who is it? It's me. God made man in his own image, did he or didn't he? Or she, whoever. But we come from a perfect base, perfect genetic database called God. Either you believe it or you don't. Doesn't matter. That's how it is. From there you have a belief system where you start programming yourself. And within this belief system, you start to have results on this box. For instance, I am depressed. I must go to doctor and I must get some pills. Doctor, how much are the pills? No, those aren't expensive enough, they won't work. Give me the best, most expensive antidepressant you can give me because it's on medical aid. I've got to use up my medical aid. I've still got a bit over this month. So if I take that pill and I'm depressed, then I won't be depressed. They did studies with some of the top antidepressant companies, and you'll love this. you know, all the famous names, Eli Lilly and Prozac and everything else, they always test against a placebo, against a sugar pill. So in a group of patients who wanted antidepressants, they divided them exactly in half and gave the one half sugar pills and the other half all these expensive antidepressants. And what was the result? Now normally you try and perform over a placebo, and when you get a result of about 10% over placebo, you've got somewhere. Do you know what the results were? It was hardly any difference. Your belief system can make a sugar pill into an expensive antidepressant medication. Are you listening when it comes to diabetes? What are you putting in your mouth and making work in your body? But you know, with the antidepressant, the results were so good that the people on the placebos had read the package insert and were manifesting side effects. Oh, I'm getting heart palpitations. Oh, I am increased hunger. Oh, I'm getting a bit of insomnia. Oh, I've got a little restless leg here and there. They manifested it from here and produced it in the body. So if a diabetic comes to me and says, I've got this problem on medication and this, and you really look at the person in the eye and say, you know what, you're bullshitting yourself, there's actually nothing wrong with you, you're just eating crap. What's going to happen? I destroy your belief system. Half the people who are taking diabetic medications basically are just eating too much starch and too much sugar. That's the problem. And it gets worse and worse and worse the more insulin resistant you become. Right. I first want to find out, before I tirade too much about this problem, I'm going to help you. But you've got to know how you have caused this disease. I'm not talking about blood type, the type 1. Have we got any type 1 insulin dependent? That's another story. That is something we can't change. We can modify, but we can't change. But most of the other people in this room have eaten themselves there. They've just eaten themselves there. For whatever reason. And people won't like what I'm saying, but they mainly eat themselves there. And as such, they depend on the good doctor who gives them all the drugs to manifest the disease. By the time somebody is picking up high blood pressure, high cholesterol, are you sent to a dietitian or a cardiologist? For high blood pressure medication, cholesterol lowering, and for statins? Or are you being told, my goodness me, you have just become insulin resistant? That is the true cause of what we call the metabolic syndrome, syndrome X. Diabetes does not exist on its own. It is just a further wearing down of insulin resistance to the point that you can't use the insulin, so you start making more and more of it. And then you take medications and supplements, and you spend a lot of money trying to stimulate insulin sensitivity, and you're still eating the wrong food, and you keep doing that. So the first step is very easy. I'm going to show you what an insulin receptor is. This side of the magnet is an insulin receptor, and we have 20,000 on each cell. So we've got plenty of insulin receptors, and we've got plenty of insulin. Right, because we are not insulin efficient. We're just insulin resistant. So insulin, when there's glucose coming onto the cell, the insulin logs onto the receptor and sticks. Right. When you're insulin resistant, the polarity of the insulin receptor changes, or it can be blocked. When the polarity is reversed, you try and get these two magnets to stick together. What happens? Huh? This is driven. When you reverse the polarity, right. So this is what happens on your cell's gates. They either open or close. So somehow you've closed the insulin receptor. It's very easy to do that. You know what does this? Cortisol. Bingo! Cortisol resistance also makes it worse. So cortisol is causing this to happen. Not that, but The insulin is not going to put that glucose into that cell. So where does the glucose go? Now there's another thing. When you're becoming insulin resistant like that, the glucose in your blood accumulates and the levels have to come down. So what does the body do? The insulin in the blood can handle that glucose. It sends it all to the liver. And inside the liver, it converts that sugar into fat. Free fatty acids come from the glucose, not from the fat, not from the olive oil, not from the butter. It's coming from carbohydrates. And this is how they find it totally amazing that a grain-eating vegetarian can have some of the highest cholesterol on earth. It's amazing, isn't it? Because starch, carbohydrate, sugar turns to fat in the liver. And the enzyme that converts it to fat is a one-way enzyme. It doesn't convert it back to sugar. It puts some glycogen into the liver, the glucose, to store it for when you need it. The rest gets converted to fat. Now your liver fills up with fat, free fatty acids. The liver can't handle it all. You're short of bile. Those free fatty acids start to leak out of the liver. How many people email me and say they have a fatty liver? They don't know how they don't know how it got there because they don't eat any fat. Oh, but how many slices of bread a day do you have? Oh, I don't eat white bread. I eat brown bread because doctor says it's healthy. Really, when you're a blood type O and you're doing this with your bread, is it healthy? So the more complicated you get about trying to eat healthy and not eating suitably, you are going to stay in trouble. So we can set you free this afternoon by making it very easy. Cause number one of insulin resistance is cortisol. Whenever you're stressed, whenever you're full of adrenaline, and you're angry, and you're now angry with Sue, I can feel the cortisol rise, and you're becoming insulin resistant. And the more insulin resistant you become, the more cortisol you pump. And excess insulin causes cortisol. So it's dog eat its tail. It goes in a vicious circle. Cortisol and insulin. We have a hormonal problem here. We basically have a software problem because hormones are software. And the one instruction is fighting the other. So when all the free fatty acids come out of the liver, what do? They also go to the insulin receptor. Some of the phospholipids, drop a phosphate molecule onto the insulin receptor. Now along comes the insulin and other little bits of muck get in the way. Where's your insulin engagement with the receptor? So the receptors get dirtied up. There's another horrible thing that happens to an insulin receptor, and that is with heavy metal. Our fillings, with electropollution, radiation, all gum up the insulin receptors. So the insulin cannot pack the glucose that you had for lunch into your cells, especially the muscle cells become very, very insulin resistant, and you start to hate exercise. Then the fats build up, and the phospholipids drop phosphorus onto the insulin receptors, and they gum up. Then you try and exercise, and your muscles get sore. Why? Because they are not getting the glucose, and they are pumping lactic acid into your body, and it's sore. So you think, well, exercise doesn't work. Now I'll go to doctor, and I'll just up my medication. And some people, I've spoken to diabetics who take more medication so that afternoon they can have more cookies at tea time, and another chocolate. I'll just up my medication, and then I can up my Kit Kat allowance. Right. This is where we go with this type of condition. Now, it's not just diabetics I've got it in for. Wait until I get onto HRT or any of the others. This is a nice group. You can change within 2 or 3 weeks. You can get your medications right down, and you can soon live a normal, healthy, happy life. But if you don't believe me, and your belief system is that you need glucophage, metformin, and all the other nonsense that you're putting in your mouth, then so be it. You will not change your body. But if you believe that you can change and clean out your body and slowly wean yourself off the drugs, then you can become a new person. I've done this now for over 12 years. I work on the Cape Flats. I work with the Muslim people a lot. And we always have the challenge during this time of Ramadan when they fast. Oh, I can't fast because I'm a diabetic. And I say to them, are you eating? No. So then why do you need to take medication in the morning? Oh. Now if you eat food that doesn't require insulin, do you need to take something that's got to get the insulin mechanism working? No. You then enter something that a very clever man discovered. Barry Sears, the zone. Who's familiar with the zone? Right. The zone is where insulin does not need to act in the body. And you eat within that zone, which means the carbohydrates are cut right down. The good fats are introduced, your omega-3 and your essential fatty acids. For the rest, you pack up on natural things like fruit and vegetables, but fruit that is low in sugar or high in fiber. So a green apple would be better than a sweet apple, for instance. But on the zone diet, you can eat freely and happily without taking any medication because the insulin monster is put to peace. And your blood sugar starts to regulate. There's no hypoglycemia, there's no hyperglycemia because you stay within the zone. And it's a whole diet that is designed to regulate your insulin requirements. But it is still not 100% there because it does not embrace the blood type. So I took this book and I combined it with this book, with Peter Didamo's technology. So we got one step further into eating what suits you. So not only do you put foods in your body that agree with your blood type, you now eat within a ratio that doesn't upset the insulin. Is this making sense? Doctors put patients on diets when they're becoming diabetic. And they put them on an exercise program. And in most textbooks you look at when it comes to diabetes, they say, easily reversed by a good diet and exercise. It's a totally controllable condition. But the problem is it is also linked to the other factors of insulin resistance. So it's only one part of the story because your triglycerides are in trouble. LDL cholesterol, too much. HDL, too low. It comes with this package. Within this package as well, especially for women, and the insulin resistance story becomes the polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's a hormonal disruption within the woman where testosterone becomes as active as a man with prostate BPH. That dihydrotestosterone starts to emerge. It becomes a hormonal imbalance. But it hasn't been the same with you people. The older generation, PCOS is so rare. But any girl from 14 to 30 these days has got the polycystic ovarian syndrome where they get insulin resistance from taking birth control. We get, say, we'll get, say, one or two emails a week of helps you. I've got this PCOS thing. And the big thing around them, this is the new generation of diabetics we're treating. But their cause was progestin and all these horrible contraceptives that they're having today. They just don't menstruate for year after year. And then they stop and they, oh my goodness, out comes the acne, the hair falls out, and the cycles become all irregular, they can't fall pregnant. But within that cluster is the same insulin resistance that you people have been living with all these years. So for them and for you, the protocol is the same. You have to eat within the zone. Now people like to take things for diabetes, and there are lots of things you can take. But don't put the rubbish in with the supplements. Don't put the rubbish in with the medications. And for goodness sake, if you want to wean off your medication, don't take supplements side by side with the medication. Because whether you believe it or not, natural things can work like drugs. These cinnamon-based supplements are so good, they actually compete with your medication. So when you normally, say, get low blood sugar after 2 hours, you may get it after 1 hour or straight away. But you keep taking doctor's medications and then you cheat behind his back and you take the alternative that work like a medication. So please consult a doctor who is... I constantly send out emails and information packages to everybody. I give help freely as a consultant to both patients as well as their doctors. And some of the better educated doctors actually then interact with me, and I can send patients to them and I learn to trust them. But not all doctors are blood type literate, or even prepared to consider the fact that we have 4 different blood types. And diabetes is caused differently in each of the 4 blood types. So you cannot generalize and say, okay, all you people, it's from eating too much starch, it's from eating too much fat. Each blood type gets diabetes differently. The major group happens in men at about 40. And in the blood type Lewis style, where you get a negative, they are more prone to it. And the non-secretor. That's the biggest proportion of diabetics we get. In the women, it happens a bit differently because they have a lot of estrogen in their body, a lot of fat, their thyroid problems are all out of whack, and it comes from a different line. They're also more prone to sugar cravings and chockies and things like that. So, how then would a blood type A get diabetes? Blood type A handles carbohydrates and grains and even bread very, very well. But oh my goodness, on the meat, that's where they come apart. And that's where the disruption begins. A blood type O, on the other hand, can handle meats and fats exquisitely. They've got plenty of bile, strong stomach acid, and you know what? A blood type O has got blood that is so thin, it doesn't really clot. The blood type A has got blood that's so thick it clots when you sneeze. Blood type makes a big difference. You can't cut somebody open until you know the blood type. What kind of blood? Oh, it's O. Oh my God, it's running like hell. A, it's clotting. Give it warfarin. We're different. We are different. And we get diabetes differently. Mainly food type lectins that are not suitable to it. So the blood type O gets diabetes at the drop of a hat, especially the old non-secretor is your original blood type O hunter-gatherer who ate meat and fruit and roots and meat. Didn't have bread in those days. Didn't have sugar and sweeties and fructose. You know about fructose? There's been such a flip around about fructose. It was supposed to be a non-insulin reactive sugar until they turned around a few years later, very scientifically, and found out it was the worst cause of diabetes in the world. But especially to blood type O, and especially to the O non-secretor, you get diabetes from starches and sugars. Dangerously so. Blood type B handle milk and dairy products very well. None of the rest do. Again, different. But give them bread and chicken. Instant recipe for diabetes. Develops. And this lovely little legend of eat what you crave, eat what you feel like. It's usually the devil talking to you. Allergenic addiction. You get so addicted to the thing that's doing you harm that your body releases opioid drugs to alleviate the toxic shock you get when you eat something bad for you. And so you crave more and more. Now I'm going to introduce to you something a little bit different so you can understand where we go from here. Right? So, the doctor will diagnose syndrome X when you put the tape measure around your waist. And in women, if it is greater than 30 inches, you are insulin resistant. And in men, if it is greater than 40 inches, you are insulin resistant. That's very cruel in terms of medical science, because a lot of people are very thin when they're diabetic. It's a different problem. It's also food not agreeing with you syndrome. It's also something to do with leaky gut, an over-anxious immune system, and fighting with your food. But the permeable membranes and the antigens and the immune system and the inflammation all have a part to play. But when the old waistline is like this, and it can't wrap around, and you need a, can I please have an extension of the tape measure? You know, in the airports, sometimes you sit in an aeroplane and somebody needs an extra piece of seat belt sitting next to it. It's definitely advanced stage of syndrome X. And a lot of these people with the larger waistline don't eat a lot. They just don't. But they're stressed and they're worried and they're depressed and they hurt, and that's why the waistline is expanding, because the cortisol from the stress makes them insulin resistant, and so they look up. So that is not fair. The other thing that is really good to know these days is that there are wonderful supplements that can work to help that insulin, to clean up those receptors. There are lovely things. You know, there's cinnamon, there's the omega-3 oils, there's chrome, and another fantastic thing is, according to Barry Sears, the vital ingredient of supplying energy to cells and conquering this whole insulin resistance problem is a thing called cyclic AMP. And I had to go through this whole book to discover how you can get cyclic AMP. Now, we've heard of ATP, you know, when you burn glucose in the Krebs cycle and you use citric acid and you make 2 carbon molecules and all the rest. The single energy module is called cyclic AMP. And when you get that into your body, it automatically goes and gobbles up all the bad fat. It puts all the energy into the mitochondria of your cells, and it's a total miracle. But the biggest miracle of the lot is that it comes from a simple little plant, Coleus Forskholii. Your shortcut to getting the right energy into your cells, to melting off all the fat, to alleviating the cause of asthma, which is a shortage of cyclic AMP, to alleviate the whole insulin resistance factor, which is a shortage of cyclic AMP. So I'm not telling you this as the savior, but it certainly is a supportive thing in trying to get over this insulin resistance syndrome. So we have added that to some other nutrients in the Mega Slim capsule. This is not a slimming pill. I made it so it was a supportive nutrient for detoxification. But inside here is the diet sheet. That is Mega Slim. And that can actually knock off about, we've had 10 kilograms within 2-3 months in some cases, because they are studying the whole protocol. It's about the body and how you feed it and how you clean up each thing. I'll give this out free of charge. You don't have to use Mega Slim. You just have to apply the protocol. For that, you have to eat according to your blood type. You have to eat according to the zone. So I've listed all the foods you can and can't eat on this sheet of paper. It's on my website. This is all for free. It's all up to you. But I make the most enemies when I try to help people change their belief system. Most people will say, no, I get the drugs free from medical aid, and if I take a little bit more, I can eat a little bit more chocolate. And don't rock my boat, because supplements cost me money. You know what? Junk food also costs you money. How are you going to spend that money? And are you prepared to live free of side effects, only with advantages? Eat consciously, live consciously, not get yourself into cancer traps, not eat up your joints, not have yourself riddled with parasites. It is all possible. But you have to change. You have to accept or reject that it is so. Because you can make yourself full of pain. You can make this pain go away. It's up to you. You can lay your hands on yourself. You can change your hormones. The biggest problem I have is with hormones at the moment. That's HRT, the anti-diabetic drugs, and the ones that are causing cancer. It's about hormones. I have a very, very nice section on cancer on my website where we explore how it works. But when you are morbidly obese and insulin resistant, you are sitting duck for all sorts of hormonal cancers.